And what class is this? 515? When do you graduate? Yeah, it depends on the scores today. Hey, first off, great job with this class. Okay. At FTX, you guys went through and did really well, incorporating new things. One of the things we do is this regional security discussion. What was really important to me is when you look at the class. How many international officers do you have? 29. And how many Marines? Yeah, I count those 9 now. They count as international. Whole different culture. You got regional issues. Part of being here at the captain's course is being honest with your challenges, your problems, and where you're at. So what you're going to get today is the Balkans, but you're going to get, let me get the mic fixed. You're going to get perspectives, okay? Just like the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force and the Army look at a problem differently. These countries have different interests and you'll look at a problem differently. So take what they say, look at the area, but also look at where you're from or where you're going to and similar challenges, okay? Because refugees, border issues, and those types of conflicts occur all over the world. Okay, these guys put a lot of effort into it, a lot of good discussion. We've also got the next class coming in that are in MCoE prep out in the back so they can be here and kind of see how this works. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the students.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Balkans. How many people have been in the Balkans? Raise a show of hands. Okay, so you guys are going to come down and do the briefing. I'm sure you're all a little bit exhausted from studying for the exam, but we are going to try to have fun, learn something new. You'll see our point of view in our regional issues. You will see that in some issues we don't necessarily agree, yet we're all here learning the same stuff and working together to achieve our strategic goals with our countries and our allies. So, the title is Transition from East. All right, next slide, please. Today, we have 4 countries present in the briefing. From Croatia, we have Lieutenant Debak, Lieutenant Anic, Lieutenant Vujošević from Montenegro, Captain Barbagiris from Greece, Captain Sepapas, also from Greece, and I'm Captain Kralani from Kosovo. The topics we are going to cover today are, next slide, please. Historical background of the Balkans from 1945 to the recent days. Next, we're going to have 4 different examples on how we view the changes from our individual perspectives, starting from Croatia, Greece, Montenegro, and ending with Kosovo. And then we will finish the topic with the future challenges, future security challenges, and, as I said earlier, with a discussion. So, next slide. What is the Balkans? The Balkans is a peninsula located in Southeast Europe. It consists of 13 countries, and I will read them out just for awareness. Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Greece, Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro, Romania, Serbia, Slovenia, and Turkey. When we say Turkey, we mean the part of Turkey that belongs to the European side of the territory. It has access to 4 different seas. That's why it is strategic, and it has always been a place where there have been conflicts and issues evolving throughout centuries. The Adriatic Sea that goes between Italy and 4 different countries of the Balkans, the Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, and the Black Sea. It includes a population of 140 million of all of these countries. Now, if you think about the population of Europe, that's a significant percentage of the European population. Next slide. If you can go back, please. Just for orientation, what's here again? Italy, okay. So you guys know what I'm talking about. What's here? What continent? Yes, all right. So we're all good. Map, trace, orient. All right. I learned something, sir. Domination of Eastern Bloc to post-World War II. What happened after World War II was that most of these countries fell under USSR regime or puppet governments, because when the three powers met in Germany, it was decided that this area would be left to USSR, where they could control and basically deal with it. Most of these countries, as I said, were communist. Greece and Turkey were excluded from the communist regime that occurred throughout the region. Yugoslavia was initially a part of the Eastern Bloc, but they pulled out and created the non-aligned movement. Yugoslavia at this time had 8 different republics and provinces, which are now all, most of them are now independent countries. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Slovenia, and Vojvodina. Vojvodina is still a province within Serbia, whereas the rest are now independent country. Albania was also originally part of the Warsaw Pact. However, they pulled out of the Warsaw Pact and continued to be a communist ruled country, but with no ties to USSR or China. In 1952, this was a turning point for the region when Greece and Turkey on the same day became NATO members. They were the first in the region to do so. From 1955 to 1991, Bulgaria and Romania were part of the Warsaw Pact, and the USSR had heavy influence on the region. So what you see now, most of the region, until 89, 91, when the big changes in Europe happened due to what event? Yes, fall of the Berlin Wall. Next slide, please. Now, if we look in the strategic and military point of view, these were the alliances throughout Europe during Cold War. What you see, the red is former USSR. Now there are other countries that are part of NATO, but back in the day, this was USSR or USSR influenced. You had these countries who sided with the Warsaw Pact, basically non-NATO and effectively against NATO. You had Yugoslavia, who was first with part of the Eastern Bloc, but for the majority of the Cold War was a non-aligned country, dealt with both sides, the US and the USSR. The stuff in blue is what were initially the NATO countries, and the colors in green or in light blue are basically countries who are either neutral or sided with the West, but not with the East. Okay, we've titled this one, The Fall of Berlin Wall basically shifts the ideology in our region. New era, new alliances, unfortunately new wars. In 81, however, the first country to join EU in the region is Greece. In 89, as we mentioned earlier, the fall of Berlin Wall sparks a revolution and sparks an initiative to many countries to shift from the terror, from the communism rules they had been living in, or not necessarily harsh. Some were not very bad, what's the word? Some were not very harsh communists. However, people believed that democracy should be the solution for our region. So in 89, Romania ends communism through a revolution. They throw down the government and they kill their own president as a punishment measure for what he did during his regime. In 1990, Bulgaria changes the constitution, removing Communist Party as a key role in the government. What was very common for our countries, or for these communist-led countries, was that the party basically controlled the government and everything that was a part of it. Basically, it was higher than the constitution itself. The party could do anything they wanted with the government. It's like having the Republican Party in power, and they are over the constitution. That's how much power they had. In 1991 through 1999, what occurs in Yugoslavia is the breakup of Yugoslavia through multiple wars, and concludes with, like I said earlier, 7 different independent countries. Next slide, please. Now, you remember the red color that occurred? This is what the current situation is. Slovenia, Romania, Bulgaria were the first in the region to join NATO after the fall of Berlin Wall. Remember earlier we had Greece and Turkey. So now the region is expanding in NATO. In 2009, we had Croatia and Albania join NATO. The most recent country to be invited into NATO is Montenegro. This occurred in December of last year, so more than a month ago. And basically now it's just a technical procedure. They can be considered a NATO country right now. Kosovo, Macedonia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina aim to become, they are at different stages of becoming NATO members. Some are parts of PFP. Some have NATO advisory teams embedded with their Ministry of Defense, which is basically a long process to become a NATO members. But their strategic goals are to become NATO members. Serbia does not aim to become part of NATO. Moldova so far has stated they will be neutral. They have not decided if they want to or not. In the meantime, they have decided to be neutral. Now you will see that Moldova, I didn't specify earlier, technically because of the peninsula, they are considered part of the regions, but in most of the initiatives, in most of the security cooperations that happens throughout Europe, and political and economic cooperation, they are not always a part of it just because of their geographic location up above the Black Sea and closer to Russia. Next slide, please. Now we will have Captain Barbagiris brief us on Greece.
Good afternoon, guys. I am Captain Barbagiris Achilleas from Greece. First of all, I would like to say that it's a little bit strange that we are presenting about the Balkans, Greece, cooperating with Kosovo. You should know that it's a country that it's not recognized by Greece. And this cooperating here for this presentation can only be done only here in Fort Benning. So we'll move on to Greece. Hellas, it's the actual name of our country and not Greece as you know it. Back. This is our flag. 9 stripes represent the 9 syllables of Eleftheria ή Thanatos, which means freedom or death, which is our motto. Moving to next slide. A general information about my country. As you saw in the previous pictures, it's located in the south of the Balkan Peninsula. Almost 11 millions. 97% of them are Christian Orthodox. We are Christian Orthodox. Only 3% are other religions. The capital, as you all know, it's Athens. Almost half of the population of Greece is located in Athens. And also, you all know about the cultural influence that Greece has strong in all continents. You know, you have heard about democracy. You know about democracy. You know about philosophy, history, maths, the Olympic Games, theater. All were born in Greece. Next slide. This is the location in the Balkans and the Mediterranean. Our borders are with Albania, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, or Fyrom, which is the recognized name from the United Nations, and not Macedonia, which my country does not recognize as the official name of this country. Bulgaria, Turkey, in the east. From the south we have Egypt, and from the west is Italy. Next slide. Before I move on to the modern days, I would like to say a few things about our performance in World War II, because it was vital for us how we oriented in the West and not followed the East Bloc. For us, the World War II began into the 28th of October in 1914. First, the Italians attacked from the Albanian borders. They wanted to enter without any fight. Of course, the answer once again from the Greeks was not just come and get it. It was just a simple no. Greece resisted not only successfully, but 1 month later we started counter-offensive operations, and we almost liberated the half of the Albanian. The terrain that it was conducted, as you can see, it was very difficult. The winter that the battles were taking place was one of the worst winters on those years. Next slide. Unfortunately, in the April of 41, Hitler comes from a different direction. We had to fight in two fronts. This was difficult for a small army. So eventually, Germans occupied Greece, and they kept it until 1944. But the remaining of the Greek army left the Greek. Some of them stayed and formed resistance. The rest left in Africa, formed the 1st Greek Mountain Brigade under General Montgomery's 8th Army. Here you see the commander of the brigade with meeting with General Montgomery. Next slide. Important battle we participated in the North Africa front with the second battle of El Alamein. You see the Greek brigade in the center of this battle. Next. After we moved with the Allies to Italy, forming the 3rd Mountain Brigade under the 1st Canadian Division, so we have a connection and we fought together with the Canadians. Important battle we participated, which was victorious for us. It was the Battle of Rimini, the liberation of this town. We fought with the Canadians in urban operations during the World War also. Next slide. And that is the whole. This is our performance in World War II. After an occupation, usually follows a civil war. So we had a civil war, which was the first time that after the World War II, Russia tried to have an influence. So the civil war took part between the Greek government, supported by the United States and the Great Britain, and the Democratic Army of Greece was the military branch of the Communist Party in Greece. The result, of course, was the defeat of the Communists. Next slide. We follow the Allies again to the Korea. One more time, we fight the Communists in Korea from 50 to 53. The participation was the Greek infantry battalion, almost 1,000 men, and 7 transportation planes. Greece was the 5th largest contributor of forces in the Korea. Important to that, it's 1950, we were attached to the US 1st Cavalry Division as the 4th Battalion of the 7th Cavalry Regiment. And also in 52, we were attached in the 15th Infantry Regiment of the US 3rd Infantry Division. So again, we have fought together, and we have a connection with the US 1st Cavalry and the 3rd Infantry Division. 15 officers and 168 men were killed from this battalion, and 33 officers, 570 men was the wounded ones. Next. From that time, after the Korea, the second time that Russia tried to influence Greece was at the end of the 60s. We are at the center of the heart of the Cold War at that time. The army thought that it was a good way in order to counter this rise of the Communist Party, to make a coup. We had a military dictatorship from 67 until 74. At the end of this military dictatorship, we had an unfortunate event. Turkey in 74 attacked and occupied almost more than 40% of the island of Cyprus, successfully but illegally. It's not recognized, this invasion and this part that it's taken, it's not recognized by any country apart from Turkey, also to the present years. After that, this triggered almost like a Cold War situation with us and Turkey, which is still an ongoing situation. We had several border incidents in the Aegean Sea, especially. 97, the most important one was in 87 with the search and rescue Turkish ship which entered our waters. And in 1996, the most important one was the EMEA with these two islands, which called EMEA. This is the picture of a Turkish journalist who landed with a helicopter on one of these islands, took out the Greek flag, put the Turkish flag. This was an act of war for us. Both of our countries mobilized their armies. We were almost to have a conflict. The US intervened in the last moment, and we stopped what could have been a worse situation. Next. And we reach our present times. From 2009, everyone knows from the media that Greece has an economic crisis, austerity measures. The unemployment rates reached almost 25%. We have economic recessions. Of course, it's not as bad as it looks, as the media want to look like. To finish, I would like to remind you just that Greece is a founding member of the United Nations from 1945, NATO member from 52, and the European Union member from 81. That's all from Greece, and we move on to Croatia.
Okay, I'm First Lieutenant Anić. This is my colleague, First Lieutenant Debak. We are here to present you the Croatian transition from communist era to the modern army, modern state as we are now. So next slide. Okay, first orientation, right? First we'll orient you on the north. We have Slovenia and Hungary. On the south we have Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro. On the east we have Serbia, and our biggest boundary is with Italy, because we are sharing the continental boundary and the sea boundary, like a coastline. We are, like you see, multi-party parliamentary republic after 1991. Next slide, please. Okay, just to show you something interesting about Croatia. Okay, basically it consists from 3 regions, like a valley type, like Pannonian Basin, this really hard mountain area, we call it the Dinaric Alps, and Adriatic Basin. This is all of this. So like you see, the total area of Croatia is basically like territory of Georgia here in the States. But it's really interesting because in our seaside, our coastline, we have around 1,000 islands. So for this, we are like a specific country in the world. Next slide, please. I didn't told on the slide before, the population of Croatia is around 4.5 million, and basically all Roman Catholics. Okay, I'm not going to talk about every year of beginning of the time, but I just wanted to emphasize, because most of the people think that Croatia was established and created in 1991 after our war. No, Croatia was established at 7th century, and we first had our kingdom in 1924 year. Next slide, please. But because of our strategical position in Europe, basically we were called all through the history like defenders of modern Europe. So because of the security, because of our small territory, through the history we entered a lot of unions to establish our position in all the Europe. But in the last 50 years, like from 45 to 91, we were part of Yugoslavia, like it was like a communist era, communist regime. We volunteered to enter the Yugoslavia like in all the unions. Next slide, please. Okay, we declared our independence on the 25th of June 1991, and then the Yugoslavia, or I can say that the rest of the country, who was Yugoslavia, didn't like that, so they invaded Croatia and occupied Croatian territory. So our war lasted from 1991 till 1995. So basically, we didn't have any organized army in Croatia, because even the Croatia, as part of Yugoslavia, we were part of Yugoslavian army. So it was like a specific point of time, because we need to fight the enemy and we don't have the army. We don't have any kind of force in Croatia, you know. So from the 0 soldiers in the country till 1995, when the war ended, we established and organized 65 brigades, and we established the force around 330,000 people. Additionally, we have around 40,000 police officers. So basically, in the beginning of the war, we rely on the police officers, but they grew through the war like our force. Next slide, please. Okay, I don't want to talk about all the war, but I want to show how the well-planned and organized operation can do a lot of things. So, till the 1990 to the 1992, former Yugoslavia countries occupied territory of Croatia, and it represents on this map with a red color. So it was occupied around 30% of Croatia. We stopped the enemy at these boundaries. So basically, the goal of Yugoslavian army is to cut the Croatia in 3 parts, like cut the eastern part and cut the southern part. So in the southern part, they succeeded. But in the eastern part, we stopped them. So we sat down, we trained, and we planned and organized three big military operations. We call it Flash, Storm. We call them Flash, Storm, and Thunder. These 3 military operations will restore our national boundaries and finish the war, like push the enemy out of our country. So the first one, Flash. Circle this. We wanted to push the enemy from this pocket and establish a freedom of movement through the Croatia, through the central part to the eastern part, because basically almost they cut the eastern part of Croatia. So in 72 hours, this first operation, in 72 hours in May 1995, we pushed the enemy out of our national boundaries, and it was a really great success. But this operation was only setting the conditions for a big thing to come. Next slide, please. Okay. Operation Storm. It started at August 1995, and it lasted only 72 hours. And the most interesting part about this operation, so we are basically involved in this territory, like this. The main points about this operation is that it was the biggest military operation in Europe after the Second World War. It was involved around 150,000 people. So every part of the a small sector was in some kind of a bigger picture, you know. So if you fulfill this condition will allow you to do that, you know. So basically, in 72 hours, we pushed the enemy from our national boundaries, from our country, and we delivered in 72 hours 18% of our territory. And it's really important, additional thing that no man can succeed in history, that like I showed you before, this is like really hard mountain area. So to support our troops, our maneuver to our troops, and push the enemy from our country, we, with the unity of effort, with the engineer assets, we position our tanks on the height of 1,200 meters above the sea level. And we use the tanks as an asset, as an indirect fire directly supporting the maneuver, and as an indirect fire like artillery to push the enemy in Bosnian territory. Even with the coordination with the Bosnian army, we supported with these tanks their maneuver. So this is really interesting. The third action, Thunder, the goal was to liberate the eastern part of Croatia, but this operation never occurred because UN and Europe strongly advised otherwise. And we sat down with the enemy and with the peaceful retrogression, we liberate this eastern part of Croatia. Next slide. Okay, I just wanted to say that Croatia, although it's only 4.5 million people, and we were deploying Croatian forces in Afghanistan from 2003. So this number till 2003 is around 400. Now we reduced as any part of the NATO. We reduced our number of military in Afghanistan. So today is 105. So till the beginning of deployment, till now, we deployed around 4,000 people in like brigade level. So it's a big thing because Croatia army is consists only with of two brigades, a couple of regiments. So if you send one brigade outside, like in this specific time, it's a big deal. We are also involved in all of these UN missions as a European battle group and a peace support operation. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show with this slide that the transition, like you saw in the first couple of slides, transition for 65 brigades and 330,000 people to well-trained around 70,000 people. Like you see, the most of the structure is like modern army, like yours. Next slide. Okay, I will be followed by my colleague about the regional issues.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to continue with the presentation, something about Croatian security policy and future challenges. Of course, in the beginning, everything I'm going to say here is my own personal stand of view, and that does not represent the official stand of Croatian government. Croatian main security pillars are NATO and European Union from 2009, NATO member, and 2013 European Union. Also, one new thing, Adriatic, Baltic, and Black Sea initiative. It is an idea and initiative from our current president, which involve 12 European countries, Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Litva, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Basically, the aim of this initiative is to strengthen the overall cooperation in Central Europe in political, economical, infrastructure, and security areas. Some security challenges, migrant crisis and immigration crisis. Whole Europe is affected by that, and my country also. Just in last few months of 2015, something like more than 500,000 of refugees passed to my country. Some of them remain and staying, and you can imagine when you take the number of people of population in my country that this is a huge number. That could be and could represent a security threat to my country. It can drive economic instability to my country, and we all know that we can have possible terrorist infiltration using this way of this migrant crisis. Economic crisis is also one of the security challenges of my country. Something like 100,000 people left from Croatia just last year, basically into Germany because of the lack of the jobs and bad economic situation. Also, economic crisis could be related with crime increase and gray market increase, and it could be related, and it is related with military budget. Negative population growth rate. Unfortunately, the numbers are bad, and if this thing continues until 2050, we will have decrease of 1.5 million people in Croatia. That's basically 30%. My current government has recognized this issue, and they are currently dealing with that with some kind of programs. I hope that they will make some kind of efforts. Situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is probably the most interesting part, because the lack of progress of necessary political, economical reforms continue to cause political instability, economical instability, and if you take that, and you know that in Bosnia and Herzegovina you currently have very large communities, Islamic radical communities, and you have something like more than a few hundred people from Bosnia and Herzegovina that fought for ISIS in Syria and Iraq and returned to Bosnia and Herzegovina. That could be a really serious threat. Recently, you had attack on American embassy in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 2 soldiers were killed from the part of that Islamic community. Also, there is a large presence of illegal military equipment in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And with all of these factors, Bosnia and Herzegovina in the future can be a very good environment for hybrid warfare. NATO challenges are, of course, also the Croatian challenges, and whatever we're going to face as NATO, we are facing that together. That concludes my presentation.
And now we'll have Lieutenant Bojic from Montenegro represent.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am First Lieutenant Ivan Vojošević from Montenegro Armed Forces, and in next 5 to 6 minutes, I will try to give you some basic information about my beautiful country. Next slide, please. So this map is blow up, so we are not that big. I will start with our neighbors. So the southwest part we have Croatia. Western part is Bosnia and Herzegovina. Northern part and northeast part is Serbia. Eastern part Kosovo, and southeastern part is Albania. To the south we have Adriatic Sea with almost 300 kilometers of seaside. Basically, the Montenegro is divided into three regions. So the northern part is mountain region, central part is continental region, and southern part is Mediterranean. Next slide, please. So as you can see, we are not so big country. So our population is 620,000 of population. We are divided into several groups, like Montenegrins 45.98%, Serbs are 28.73%, Bosniaks are 8.75%, Albanians 4.91%, and the others are 12.73%. Others, which means Croatian, Italian, Russian, and etc. Next slide, please. So I will start with our history from the 1945 till the present days. So as you know, from 1945 till 1992, it was like Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. It was communism era. We were together with Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Macedonia. And in 2001, there was Yugoslavia's breakup. So from 1992 till 2003, Serbia and Montenegro were part of Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. After that, in 2003, so the Yugoslavia stopped exist. So from that period till 2006, there was like state union of Serbia and Montenegro, and basically 2003 was like beginning of our independence. In 2006, we have independence from Serbia in a referendum. In the same years, Montenegro, together with Serbia, became a member of PFP program, and in 2010 we start with our peace support operation, which I will cover that on the next slide. And 2015, Montenegro receives official invitation to join NATO alliance. Next slide, please. So this is our structure. As you can see, we are a very small country. We are very small, and we are very small army or armed forces. So we have general staff and have subordinate units. Just for the record, we are battalion level army. So we have army battalion, ceremonial company, air base, navy, logistic base, training center, communication center, MP, which is my unit, and electronic surveillance. I will cover that question about peace support operation. Even though we are very small army, we have a big contribution in the peace support operation. So anyways, since 2010, we are contributing in 3 different missions. So the first one is NATO peace support mission in Afghanistan, Regional Command North, Mazar-i-Sharif. The second one is European Union Naval Forces Atalanta mission in Somalia, and the third one is United Nations mission in Mali, Africa. I will be followed with Kosovo. Thank you.
And the last country to be briefed is Kosovo. We said this would be a short briefing, but please take into account the language barrier for us. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview. In 1912, Kosovo is occupied by Serbia. Until then, it was a geographical part of Albania. That's why 92% of the population in Kosovo is ethnic Albanian. In 1941, Kosovo joins the partisan anti-fascist movement with the aim of beating fascism in Europe, and the Yugoslav communist forces prevail. In 1945, the Socialist Republic, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia is formed, and Kosovo becomes part of it under Serbia. Yugoslavia breaks up ties with USSR. This is a shifting point. That's why the communist regime in Yugoslavia was not as harsh as some countries. However, whoever was against the system was prosecuted. In 1971, Yugoslavia approves a new constitution which grants Kosovo veto power equal to the republics in it. However, in 1989, Slobodan Milosevic, as the head of the, becoming the head of the Communist Party, removes constitutional rights from Kosovo, and we are placed under repressive measures of political and government positions being allocated to Serbian ethnic representative only, although they were a minority within Kosovo. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk for our most difficult times nearing the 21st century. In 1992, we organized a parallel system within Kosovo, which aims and seeks to reach a peaceful resolution to the issue of Kosovo. We held elections not recognized by Serbia, therefore they did not have effective control of the military, the police, or the judicial. However, we did have our own schools, which were most of the time held in private institutions because they would not be funded by the states. In 1997, a few cells started to rise up within Kosovo, young guys with the aim of being in a free country, and started to organize these cells. In 1997, the cells are organized into what was going to become the Kosovo Liberation Army. The Kosovo Liberation Army starts to organize, getting support from the outside as well, to fight Yugoslav Serbian police and military. Later on, the Yugoslav military, which at one point was up to 80,000 troops within Kosovo. At that point, Kosovo Liberation Army had 20,000, and the biggest caliber weapon they had was 60 millimeters. In 1998, the United Nations, along with European allies and the United States, decide to send a Kosovo verification mission, basically which would report on what's going on, because there was also a lot of tendency from the Yugoslav regime not to report what was going on. Because this was happening in Europe, there was ethnic genocide occurring, and the EU mission led by an American, the OSCE mission, basically stated fact that there was massacres going on in Kosovo, and they proposed that there should be an international conference to solve the issue of Kosovo. Next slide, please. In January of 1999, Serbia is represented as a state republic of Yugoslavia in Rambouillet. Kosovo, both the political parties which aim to reach a peaceful resolution, but for the first time, the KLA representatives, political appointees of the Kosovo Liberation Army, are recognized as a party, and a deal is offered to both sides. Kosovo signs the deal, which would offer a temporary solution leading up to a referendum in which the people would decide if they want to remain part of Serbia or become independent. However, Serbia refuses to sign this agreement, and when all other means are basically gone, US takes the initiative to start bombing Serbia, and in March 24th, NATO strikes began against Yugoslavian military and government targets, both in Kosovo and in Serbia. From the period of March to June, the Serbian aggression gets even bigger. Half of the population, Kosovo has 2 million, I forgot to mention, half of the population, 1 million ethnic Albanians are driven out of Kosovo to Albania, Macedonia, and a small number to Montenegro. We still have probably 15,000 refugees which came to the US during that era and remained here. In the May-June era, KLA starts coordinating with NATO, giving them targets on where the Serbian forces were hiding out their troops. One of my NCOs who was in the KLA even jokes that we were the only guerrilla warfare in the world to have our own air force, which was NATO. In June 9th, in Kumanova of Macedonia, Yugoslavia signs the capitulation and agrees to withdraw all of its troops, police, and government executives from Kosovo. NATO forces enter Kosovo and are expected as heroes, liberating the country. Then they coordinate with KLA into establishing effective control into the country. From 1999 to 2008, Kosovo is placed under United Nations mission in Kosovo. That was basically the government. The worst government you can imagine, it's called UN. They led for 9 years. It was very ineffective, a lot of corruption. And in 2006, we had 2 more years of talk with Serbia into reaching a joint resolution. The international community recognized that that was never going to happen. And the UN envoy, appointed by the head of UN, recommends that Kosovo is granted independence because there will never be a joint resolution. The happiest day of my life is 17th of February 2008, when we declared independence. Not many people in this room have experienced it. Most of us have experienced it, but it's a feeling you can't really explain. And that's when you see 100 years of struggles being achieved through that strategic goal. Next slide, please. But now we're a country, we have issues, we have problems just like everyone else. In 2015, we achieved the Stabilization Association Agreement with the European Union, which is basically the first step towards the long path to becoming a European Union member. We conducted a strategic security reform jointly with a team sponsored by the Pentagon, thank you for your taxes, which will increase from 3,000 to 5,000. So what you see is most of the world is reducing forces. We are doing the opposite, and it is not easy because the economy in the world is not doing that well, yet we are trying to achieve an annual expenditure from 3 to 5% of our GDP. And by 2021, we expect to increase our troops to 5,000, which is still a small force, but with the aim of territorial integrity and defense purposes only, and also serving in peace support operations throughout the world. Basically, becoming from a peace consumer to a peace contributor. That's the goal of the current government. In 2009, we had the NATO advisory team embedded with the Ministry of Defense. That is the path towards becoming NATO member, but that is going to happen in line with our strategic security reform. Security threats. ISIS and global terrorism do affect us. We have had people, just like other countries in the region, recruited from within Kosovo to join ISIS. Last year, in order to mitigate this, we passed on a law which gives you the maximum sentence if you participate in any wars outside of Europe. So we've had cases of people being arrested or coming back and then being arrested, and now they're being prosecuted for participating in what we call a foreign war, which doesn't have anything to do with us. As far as regional issues, Serbia refuses to recognize Kosovo. Serbia is part of the Kosovo is part of the Serbian constitution. They are in talks to becoming an EU member. We will see how that works out as far as having a country in your constitution which you basically don't control. They have annual exercises with Russia, with their biggest strategic ally in the Kosovo border. Basically, that is our security threat. Next slide, please. Now, you all heard about our different points of view, our different issues. You saw in some places we have similar issues, in some we have very different points of view. We try to present you with what is occurring in our own little world, which basically
What do you mean little?
little with many, many assets. Some of the regional challenges for the future are, next slide please, global terrorism. The biggest one right now is the refugee influx coming through Greece, Croatia, not so much through Kosovo, Albania, and Montenegro, Macedonia, Serbia, going to Hungary to getting into EU territory and on their path to go to Germany and Austria. That's where they mainly want to go. And this, as my colleague mentioned, when you have a population of 2 million or 4 million and you have 500,000 people going through every year, it's very challenging. For the police, for just to feed them is challenging. If you don't feed them, you are considered inhumane. And I really feel for these guys that have to deal with it. We don't deal with it as much. Our friends from Hungary have even had to deploy forces to deal with the issue. So it is a really big threat that you do not have a military solution to it. Another current and future challenge is Russia's influence in regional economy. They do own a lot of businesses in some countries in the region. Some countries in Europe and in the region are based their economies on Russia's oil or gas. And when that stops, then you have political tensions, political problems, which lead to military solutions, which leads to us doing our job. This was basically what we have prepared for you. We expect you now to hit us with questions, and we are no experts by any means, but we'll try to give you an honest opinion. Thank you very much. So, everybody wants to go home. Yes?
It probably varies, most definitely varies by country, but I don't know if you guys want to talk maybe individually, just the annexation of Crimea by Russia and then kind of the situation in Ukraine, like whether you think that really like affects you to a greater degree or not. Some of you are saying like trying to get into the EU, so maybe like you guys are probably more aligned one direction or another, but whether you see that as a direct threat, you think to like Russia is trying to get back to controlling like the Balkans area as a whole, and you're on the Black Sea obviously, so the Crimea, owning Russia and the Crimea is like, you know, a lot asserting their influence in that area, so I don't know if you guys just want to address that.
I can give you Kosovo's point of view. As I said, we are bordered with Serbia. This is Kosovo, this is Serbia. Their strategic ally is Russia. They hold annual exercises in there, and if it wasn't for US and NATO in Kosovo and their alliance, that would be a very big potential threat. So yes, it is a problem for me. However, if I think US has realized that you should not underestimate Russia's goals, and I don't think something will happen as far as US not shifting focus, because sometimes something happens in Africa or the Middle East, then US policy goes towards those countries and they forget about a certain region, which I understand, but it's not right.
From Croatia, I share the Kosovo opinion. Only if Russia decides to put his finger on Balkan, they will do it through Serbia and through forces in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's my point of view. That's only a matter of time in my opinion, nothing else.
Yes, Captain.
For you, with Serbia not recognizing Kosovo independence and also aligning with Russia and doing military training exercises on the border there, they ever come near Kosovo territory? Or?
So one thing I forgot to mention is because of the specific situation in Kosovo, there are 5,000 NATO troops in Kosovo. So the fact that NATO troops, we have some people who have served here in Kosovo, even some from last year. Because of that, that has not happened yet. They have not crossed the line. But I said if those troops were not there, or if we don't eventually become a NATO member, then that's always a threat. Yes?
So with specifically Greece and Croatia, you see they're very like homogenous populations, all being Orthodox Christian or Roman Catholic. Do you see a big integration problem with the influx of a really diverse population from kind of Africa and some of the Middle Eastern countries? Do you see that being a problem, and how do you think they'll actually integrate them?
One second, please.
I will answer your question. For now, it's not a problem for us because the refugees and migrants have only passed into our country. So if they remain to stay, it could become a problem. It could become.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned refugees and obviously the infrastructure required to feed, house, almost half your population of refugees. Can you just elaborate under the EU Constitution, if you accept refugees and you are essentially the sponsor country, are there not economic, I guess I use the word repercussions, but there's economic ties to that individual or that group of refugees that comes from that country?
This is what I would like for these guys to answer because I know they deal with the issue and have a better answer than you don't want. What is the rule? The rules and steps first to reach refugees that are my country.
Yeah, we were discussing about it. So the refugees entered to Hungary, to Greece, and there was an idea of them. Okay, so the question was where they enter, right? So they entered the European Union in Greece. And that was the idea from the Hungarian government that we send troops to stop them. Yeah. So that was the idea. That's okay.
I really don't know the answer. I'm not an expert in EU law, but what I know is that the country where they report first that has certain obligations, if let's say Germany refuses their asylum or their refugee status, they are sent back to the originating country, which is not their original country. It's the first EU country they started.
Right.
And that has legal implications.
So here's the challenge. Which country they get in first? So how do you get 1.2 million refugees into Germany when they're surrounded by other EU countries?
There's a lot of mountains.
Probably I can add something to the discussion. The critical situation in that crisis is that we've got a Dublin agreement which announced that those European Union countries who were the first where the actual migrant staff entered into the European Union territory is responsible to register and basically to keep the migrants in case of, for example, wealthier countries like.
Well, the first country is Greece. Okay, don't talk.
No.
The first country, they enter is Greece. Okay.
No, it could be Italy, it could be Spain, it's not just Greece. It's a problem all the way across.
Can I finish?
Now we're talking about the Balkans. That's why.
Okay, can I finish my?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, those countries refuse the migrants, basically transport them back to those countries. What was the first? It can be the Greece. The Greece faced the same problem. Then Hungary, then Bulgaria, then pretty much the eastern border of the European Union is in the same, facing the same problem. On the other hand, Germany announcing its very kind and humanitarian invitation to the 36 million people who are ready to enter the territory of the European Union probably tomorrow. And in case their camps are full and their economy will be embarrassed of this situation, they send the refugees back to Greece, to Croatia, to Hungary. So that's why our government try to keep this migration crisis within the European Union and the Schengen laws. That means we must register the migrants. We want to filter the terrorists. We want to filter those who are not eligible for refugee status. I mean, they came from stable, wealthy countries, just they want to spend some time in Germany. So, you know what I mean. So, and now this is the main fracture in the European Union decision making.
Thank you, Adam. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, Serbia, like you,
Again,
Serbia is also trying to join the European Union.
Yes.
And maybe a few steps ahead of you. So do you really feel they would try to risk everything they reached so far just to become a friend of you guys? Because although they might be Russian influence, I don't think they will try to mess with their borders because it could risk the borders of the process to European member.
I respect your opinion. I wish that was the case. But if the country's constitution states that a certain territory outside of my boundaries is part of me, I think that's, like they said, an act of declaration of war. That's also an act. The problem was that when Kosovo became independent, they never really changed the constitution. And now, what I said earlier is that they eventually have to face that issue when they want to become part of the EU. EU does not want within their umbrella countries who have territorial disputes. And that is when that challenge will actually be faced. Do I think there is a threat? Yes, again, I believe there is a threat because of their traditional ties with Serbia, with Russia. Yes.
All right, so you guys can all see that these guys over the last few weeks have really agreed to disagree, okay? And there is a Serbian officer in the room, so that's pretty interesting, right? The fact that we can have that conversation. So the reason they'll disagree is for a lot of reasons. So I'm going to ask all of you this question. Do you identify with your country, with your religion, or with your ethnicity? Which do you more identify with? Ethnicity?
Ethnicity.
Your what?
Ethnicity.
Ethnicity? Achilles?
Ethnicity, yes.
Ivan?
Israel.
What? Same?
Israel, same.
Anich?
I would say combination of all three.
Combination of all three?
Yeah, ethnicity in first place.
And the ethnicity does not always match up. Does not always match up with the country.
No.
Does not. How many Texans do we have in here?
Do we have any other questions?
Excuse me, it's not a tricky question. I'm just, we are basically Hungary basically bordered of the region. And my question would be that, what is your perception of the rule of Romania? As far as I know, Romania has a territorial debate with Russia. So basically,
Romania.
Yeah, Romania opposing Russia. However, the Serbians are the biggest ally, Russian ally in the region. So, as far as I see, there is a Montenegro, Kosovo is a NATO country bordered with Serbia, who is a Russian ally, bordered with Romania, who is a NATO country. You know what I mean.
Hungary is right here, by the way.
What is your perception of this situation? Romania rule, opposing of Russia, opposing of Serbia,
I really
Romania.
have no idea. Because Romania is not that I should be naive or ignorant, not knowing about that issue, but I really don't. Maybe somebody who's closer to Romania. Do we have someone from Romania or Bulgaria in the room? If you know the answer, please help us. If not, Bulgaria or Romania?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. Did you hear what he said? No. Okay. The territorial disputes between Romania and Russia. How does NATO and these regional countries deal with that issue, basically? Are you aware of the situation or not?
No, sir.
Okay, me neither. Sorry. That's why I specifically said we are not experts. I will get back to you. Any other questions?
First off, let's give him a round of applause. Hey, it's a great job, great fight, all the panelists, okay? And each region has some of these conflicts. We sat down last week and went over this, and I didn't realize the depth of challenges. And so as we go out as Americans in the different regions and try to help do regional security discussions, it's worth the time to sit down and understand that even though you have a lot of partners, they all have different opinions. So if you're going to get purpose, direction, and motivation, and move a group in a direction to increase security in an area, you got to understand where everyone sits. Take the time to understand, hey, this line was drawn for a reason in a border, and it changed over the years, back and forth, and why, and the ethnic part, the geopolitical part, the terrain, the religions, and how all that combines so that you inadvertently don't make strange decisions, okay? Durant line comes into mind, okay? And that you're also building teams. So again, thanks to the group, thanks to Captain Walsh and all the folks that did the security discussion that made this happen today. This refugee problem will not go away, okay? I joked about the Texans. They have a border that they have challenges with, okay? With Mexico. And so it's really easy. I mean, the problem you brought up, the refugee doesn't necessarily follow all the instructions and rules. He doesn't even understand them. He knows it's to his benefit to burn the papers from whatever country he's came from, show up in Germany and go, I'm a Syrian refugee. They get all sorts of immunity that way, no matter where he comes from. Okay? He's better off moving different routes through. And Europe has spent a lot of energy opening borders, reducing things that stop people and goods at different borders. So if you look at capacity, there's a lot of countries that their border control and customs, they reduced their manpower, and now they're having to rely on their military and their army to compensate for what used to be covered by other services, which means you're not training for other things. Okay? So a lot of depth in here. So again, thank you very much, and with that, back to your instructor.
Thank you.